At the naval training base, where legends walked and steel was forged into warriors, there lived a quiet janitor named Daniel Pierce, a single father who kept his head down, mop in hand, avoiding attention the way some men avoid gunfire. Every morning before dawn, he arrived on his old motorcycle, parking it far away so no one noticed the mismatched paint and rust. Then he slipped into the facility, sweeping corridors and scrubbing floors that echoed with boot steps far more important than his own, or so he believed. The SEAL trainees called him Ghost, not knowing that 12 years ago he had been known by a different name. A name whispered only in after-action reports and classified hallways. But Daniel didn't care. His only mission now was raising his 8-year-old son Ben, a boy with a smile bright enough to cut through the darkest memories. The boy had an illness that demanded constant attention and money. Daniel didn't have, but he worked double shift, slept little, and carried on with silent determination. One afternoon, as Daniel was mopping near the gym, a convoy rolled in. The atmosphere tightened. Trainees straightened up like iron rods. The base fell silent because the man arriving wasn't just anyone. He was Admiral Marcus Steele, the undefeated commander who built warriors and broke those who pretended to be. A man rumored to see straight through lies and expose the soul beneath. When he walked, people didn't move out of his way. His presence simply pushed the world aside. Daniel didn't look up. He kept mopping, but Steele's eyes caught him, lingered longer than they should have. Later that day, during an inspection, the Admiral found Daniel sweeping the obstacle course. The sun was blazing, the sand hot enough to burn skin, but Daniel worked calmly without a single complaint. The Admiral, amused by the janitor's steady composure, walked over. Behind him came his officers, laughing quietly, expecting the Admiral to intimidate or mock the janitor the way high-ranking officers sometimes did without thinking. "You there," Steele said, his voice like gravel scraping steel. "Janitor, what's your call sign?" The officers smirked, waiting for a confused, awkward answer. A janitor with a call sign, what a joke. Daniel paused. His fingers tightened around the broom. Slowly he lifted his gaze, and something old and dangerous flickered in his eyes. A storm he had buried long ago. For a moment, the Admiral felt something strange, though he didn't understand why. Daniel didn't laugh, didn't shrug, didn't mumble. He simply said 2 words, words that froze Steele mid-stride. "Lone Eagle." Silence struck like a grenade. The officers stopped smiling. The wind died. Even the distant shouts of trainees faded as the Admiral's face drained of color. He knew that name. Everyone in Special Operations had heard it at least once, though never from the mouth of the man himself. Lone Eagle, the silent hunter in Operation Night Talon, the man who rescued a captured SEAL team alone, wounded in enemy territory, without waiting for backup because he didn't believe in leaving anyone behind. A ghost who disappeared after the mission, officially killed in action, unofficially whispered to be alive only in rumors. And now he stood here, mopping sand, wearing a janitor's badge. The Admiral stared at him, speechless, the world collapsing into disbelief. Daniel lowered his head again and swept, as if revealing the call sign meant nothing, as if the past didn't matter. But Admiral Steele wasn't done. "You should be dead," he whispered. Daniel paused. "I am," he said quietly. "Just not buried." Ben ran over at that moment, coughing, calling, "Dad!" Daniel immediately softened, lifting his son with gentle care, wiping his nose, soothing him. And in that instant, Steele saw it. The reason Lone Eagle disappeared from the battlefield. The reason legends become ghosts. A sick little boy clinging to the only hero he had. Steele felt guilt twist inside his chest. He had unknowingly mocked a man worth 10 admirals. But the story didn't end there. The base would soon face a moment of crisis, a threat creeping inside its walls, one that would force the janitor to rise again. Not as Lone Eagle, not as a SEAL, but as a father, fighting for the only thing that ever mattered. And the Admiral, humbled and shaken, would soon learn why even legends fear the quiet ones. If you're watching, don't move. Chapter 2 will change everything. And before we continue, make sure you subscribe, because stories like this Stories that hit your heart and shake your soul are what this channel is all about. Join the family. More powerful stories await you. In the days following the Admiral's shocking discovery, whispers spread across the base like wildfire. The trainees watched Daniel with cautious awe, unable to reconcile the mop-wielding janitor with the rumored ghost of the battlefield who once saved an entire SEAL team. But Daniel paid no attention. He had learned long ago that eyes could follow him, but they didn't feed his son, didn't calm his midnight fevers, didn't pay for the medication that cost more than his monthly paycheck. Still, Admiral Steele couldn't shake the weight of it, the guilt of letting a man like Lone Eagle fall through the cracks. He requested Daniel's service file, only to find it locked under top secret. Clearance marked classified. Casualty. Someone wanted Daniel gone, erased. That meant danger. And danger didn't forget. 2 nights later, alarms blared across the base. Not a drill. Not a mistake. A security breach. The medical wing, where Ben slept during treatments, was targeted. Daniel dropped his mop, sprinting with a speed that made young soldiers feel like children. Steele followed, shouting orders, but Daniel didn't wait. He crashed into the medical wing to find armed men inside. Contractors. Wearing no insignia. Men trained, sharp, deadly. But Daniel moved like he hadn't aged a day. He grabbed a metal tray, deflecting a strike, disarming one attacker in a single motion, then sweeping another off his feet. The trainees watching stood frozen. The janitor fought with the precision of a phantom warrior. He shielded Ben with his own body, taking a knife cut to his arm, without so much as a grunt. Steele arrived with reinforcements just as Daniel pinned the last attacker to the floor. His breathing steady, his eyes dark with the fury of a father protecting his child. When the dust settled, Steele demanded answers, but the attackers remained silent. Daniel, however, knew exactly who they were. He had seen their insignia once on the men responsible for the death of his wife during a covert operation gone wrong, an event the government covered up to protect reputations. Daniel had left the Navy not because he was broken, but because he refused to be a weapon for people who treated lives like expendable chess pieces. Raising Ben became his only mission, but now they had come for his boy. Steele placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." And for the first time in years, Daniel allowed someone else to stand beside him. A full investigation began, and Steele made a vow. Lone Eagle's story would not end in a janitor's closet. He offered Daniel a position, trainer, strategist, whatever he wanted. But Daniel looked at his son, weak in the hospital bed, and shook his head. "I just want to be his dad." Steele respected that more than he could express. Yet the Admiral also understood something Daniel could not avoid. When danger hunts you, hiding doesn't save you. Standing does. So Steele did something extraordinary. He moved Daniel and Ben into base housing, placed them under military protection, and ensured Ben received medical treatment through Navy benefits that Daniel never even knew he still qualified for. The trainees didn't see Daniel as a janitor anymore. They saw him as a mentor, a quiet guardian who had walked through hell and come out carrying his son on his shoulders. Months passed. Ben grew stronger. And one morning, as Daniel walked him across the base, the trainees snapped to attention, not for the Admiral, not for an officer, but for the man they now called Sir. Steele approached, saluting him, a gesture that shocked even Daniel. "Legends don't mop floors," Steele said softly. "They rise. They inspire. They protect. And you, Lone Eagle, you always will." Daniel didn't want medals, didn't want rank, but he accepted one thing. Some stories don't end in silence. They rise again for the ones we love. And that is the true mark of a warrior. If this story touched you even a little, make sure you subscribe. Because every week, we bring you stories that lift you, move you, and remind you that heroes walk among us, sometimes disguised as janitors, fathers, or ordinary people carrying extraordinary battles in their hearts. Join the family. More inspiring stories await you.